Hello everyone! Today we're going to be talking about soil. Before we get started, let me ask you a question that I want you to think about throughout this entire lesson. Is soil alive? By the time we're done with today's lesson, we'll understand what the key components of soil are and why particle size matters. We'll also learn about the billions of microscopic bugs that make up and build our soil, and we'll figure out what it takes to keep soil healthy. While we go through our vocab today, I want you to pause after each word so you get a chance to write it down in your garden journal. Our first word is microorganism. Let's say that together. Microorganism. Microorganisms are teeny tiny bugs that you can't see without a microscope. They're that small. Our second word is decomposition. Decomposition is when microorganisms break down material and turn it into soil. Weathering, our third word, is when water, wind, and sun break material down to become soil. So we form soil through decomposition and weathering with the help of microorganisms. For our next two vocab words, let's write them down in our garden journals. Our first word is nutrients. Nutrients are something that we eat that makes us grow healthy and strong. Fruits and vegetables have a lot of these, and they get those nutrients from the soil. Organic material, don't forget to write it down, is anything that was once living. Examples of organic material are fallen leaves and branches, or even things we eat. Let's take a break from vocab and look at some different particle sizes. The particles are gravel, sand, silt, and clay. And these all help to make up soil, but they're different sizes. Based on the particle sizes, what component do you think water flows through the fastest? How about the slowest? Take a second to pause the video and write what you think in your garden journals. So now you should be able to tell me what makes up soil. It's sand, clay, and silt. And loam is a soil that's a mixture of sand, clay, silt, and maybe even some organic material too. Loam is healthy soil. Our scientist here is looking at some soil. Can you guess what she might see in her microscope? That's right, she's going to see a lot of microorganisms. Here's a crazy fact for you. In a single handful of soil, there are over 100 billion microorganisms. And all of these organisms are serving an important function in the creation of soil. Okay, it's time for your pop quiz. Let's look at this picture and see which handful of soil looks like the healthiest soil. Take a second to write down your answer in your garden journal. You can pause the video if you need a moment. The darker the soil, the healthier it is. So you are probably right that the soil on the top is much healthier. Let's try one more. Again, write down which soil you think is healthier in your garden journal. Pause if you need time. Did you write that the soil on the left is the healthiest? The dark soil with a really healthy plant growing out of it? If you did, then you were right. Another hint would have been the microorganisms growing in the soil. Remember, with more microorganisms hard at work, we get more nutrients and more water in our soils. Now you'll get a chance to check in with your garden teacher and talk more about soils. Have fun!
Okay. Hello everybody, it's Natalie here in our Pacheco garden, and today we're going to be talking about soil. The question that we are posing is soil alive? And to answer that question, we have to get our hands a little dirty and take a look at what is inside of soil. So first what we're going to do is take a look at the different types of soil that we can find. So the video talked about those 3 different types of soil: sand, silt, and clay. So I have the 3 different examples here of sand, silt, and clay. And the video said the darker the soil, the healthier that soil is, and the more plants are able to grow in that soil. So when you're looking at these 3 different soils here, let's look at the sand first. Does this look like a soil that a lot of plants are able to grow in? Is it very dark? Are there very many nutrients in this soil? Very many of those microorganisms? Doesn't look like there's too much going on in this soil to me. Some plants do like to grow in sandy soils, though. When you're thinking of when you're at the beach and there's sand all around you, there are certain plants that do prefer this soil type, but not necessarily the plants that we eat. Like the vegetables, they don't like soil like this. They don't grow very well in sandy soil. But when we're looking at our soil in the middle here, the silt, look at all of those branches and all of the twigs and rocks that come together to make up this soil, and see how dark it is. This looks like a soil that is very high in nutrients, and it looks like it has some of those microorganisms living in there. So this is a soil that our vegetables and fruit trees like to grow in, because those need a lot of nutrients so that they can grow and give us the nutrients that we need. And then lastly, we look at our clay soil here. And the clay soil, not quite as dark as our silt, and doesn't look like it has too many of those microorganisms in there. And a good way to tell what type of soil is which is by getting it wet. So when you look at the clay soil, and we pour a little bit of water in there to get it nice and wet, can make little mud pies. And you can see this soil it gets really, really sticky. So you can really make a good mud pie out of our clay soil, because it's really nice and sticky and it sticks together, because the particle size of our clay is very, very small. All of the pieces that come together to make up a clay soil are teeny, teeny, tiny. So they stick together really well. It's a soil that water doesn't run through very quickly. Water can sometimes just sit at the top of a soil like this. And then looking at our silty soil here, if we pour a little bit of water into our silty soil, it's not quite as sticky. It's a little sticky, but everything doesn't seem to stick together quite as much as it did with the clay soil, because this soil, the particle size is not quite as small. You can see the twigs in there, and you can see some rocks even, and the particle sizes there are a bit bigger. So this is a soil that water can run through a little bit more smoothly and easier. And then lastly, looking at our sandy soil here, pouring a little bit of water into our sandy soil. Oops. This water really just runs right through our sandy soil. It doesn't stick to the sand at all, pretty much. Sand can come in different shapes and sizes, but when you're at the beach and you're looking at the sand there, depends on what beach you're at, but a lot of the time the particles in the sandy soil are really big, like big rocks and the like, so the water just runs right through your sandy soil very, very quickly. And then when we're looking at a soil that maybe isn't very healthy and we want to revive it or bring it back to life, we can actually add a lot of things to that soil that will make the soil as a whole much healthier and bring it back to life. And the things that we like to add to soil to make it much healthier are those microorganisms. So we have lots of different microorganisms that live in soil, and one way to add microorganisms to your soil to make it really healthy is through compost. So here I have an example of compost from home, so you can see all the little wormies and decomposed food that's in this pile of soil in my palms here. So if we were to take this soil and add it to, say, some of our garden beds here, we are adding so many microorganisms just in one small handful of compost. We're adding so many delicious microorganisms to our soil, and this is how we can bring soil that's not so healthy back to life.
Now, you probably talked about a lot of these concepts with your garden teacher already, but if you didn't get to all of them, make sure to write down your answer to these questions in your garden journal. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.